back to The Shed here at the Shedinburgh Fringe Festival as part of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. I am really enjoying these chats. I hope you are too. I hope you're liked and subscribed and all that stuff I meant to say and you're meant to do, and you know the drill. But it has been a joy speaking to different artists about their time here at the festival and having a time to dig deep into the years they've been doing it. And this week, I'm particularly delighted to welcome a comedian, a novelist, a host, a polymath of the arts, a hilarious person, and from what I understand and what I know so far, a very, very lovely man. It is my pleasure to introduce to you, for part of his 20th year, believe it or not, here at the Fringe, the wonderful Mark Watson. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, that's a very nice introduction. You said particularly thrilled to, I know comedians come across quite needy, but is this the big one for you more than some of the other ones?
This is the one that I was like, right, if sack them all off, it's this guy or bust. Now, I'll tell you why.
I am going to look back at the other ones and see if you did this with everyone.
I haven't. And I'll tell you for why, because I've got a very key, we're going to step away from your 20 years of Fringe. Listen, Mark, all your accolades, all your novels, etc., your work on Radio 4, all this stuff. I really want to spend the next 35 minutes and 36 seconds talking about what it's like to host a podcast with Stephen Hendry.
Well,
listen, my friend,
you've come to the right place.
About. I know, right?
You've come to the only place where you can get that answer. Yeah. It's funny. Very few people are, well, you don't think that people, the wider world, are interested in snooker, but every now and again I meet someone that is, as you say, is their favourite thing of all the works I've ever done. For those not aware, I am the co-host of the World Snooker podcast with Stephen Hendry, which is not a future I imagined for myself when I was watching him on TV as a teenager.
How did that come about? Because Snooker Club is really fun. It's really nice. It's gorgeous. It's a great support to the snooker, and it's just that fix to get you through those parts of those days on those sort of 2 weeks that the snooker isn't actually on the telly.
This is the sort of mentality that we need. If
exactly.
more people were that obsessed with snooker, then our audience would grow. But it isn't bad actually. They approached me. They knew that I was a snooker fan. They said, we're looking for a comedian to host, ideally with a former player or maybe a current player. And then when Hendry's name came up, I was, of course, a bit bewildered because, firstly, I grew up mostly not liking him because he dominated the sport so much in the 90s. It's probably different if you're Scottish.
Could not be the different. Yeah.
But in fact, he's very pleasant, very nice man. On one of the first episodes, we had a laugh about it. I said, I grew up watching you, but I normally want you to lose. And he says I get that a lot.
Yeah. We're getting the nod. We'll talk about this later.
I always feel like at the Fringe I don't get to talk about the rise and fall of Scottish sport over the last 30 years for some reason.
So we'll talk about Snooker Club more later. So let's then talk about why we're here. You're doing a show here at the Shed, which is called 20 Years of Trying My Absolute Bloody Best. Is
something
that
like that, I think. Doing that. Yeah, I think it is that.
What does 20 years of trying your absolutely bloody best look and feel like, Mark?
Well, the first thing to say is it's more than 20 years I've actually been coming here, but it's 20 years since the first solo show. My actual time coming to the Fringe, the first one was 2000, and so 25 years, and I'm only 45, so that's more than say only. It feels old, but as a proportion of my life, the Fringe has been numerically quite a surprising chunk. But it is also weird to reflect. I've been in the Pleasance Courtyard. My main show's in the Pleasance Courtyard. And that's where that debut was 20 years ago. And of course, a lot of it looks so similar. It's hard to believe that it is the same space. And yet all the posters are mostly different faces. But it's the same nervous look in the eyes of the newcomers. It's the same wired atmosphere. It's 20 years is long enough that somewhere can be totally familiar and totally different at the same time, I suppose. Yeah. It both feels like a very long time and a very short time.
Yeah, and especially now as you're reflecting on that period, I guess with what you're doing in the Shed, you're sort of trying to actively look through those years.
Well, yeah, we'll see how that goes. I woke up this morning and thought, I don't know how good an idea this is, really. Probably shouldn't say that within the Shed. But the idea as listed is I'm going to attempt a sort of greatest hits look back through the...
Cool.
It must be about 11 or 12 solo shows, and then I've done all sorts of other nonsense, as you've mentioned. But firstly, it is quite, and I've been looking back over the last couple of days, it's quite difficult to actually remember it. I could just watch hours of my own footage back, but I've got better things to do at the Fringe than that, really. There's a lot of people on. And also I suppose what's more of a difficulty is it's not just like a band playing a song from 15 years ago. Most of my routines have been about things that were important to me at the time. Like I've got kids now, or my predictive texting on my Nokia phone. Like almost all of it is out of date in one way or another, which doesn't mean it won't be fun to look back on, but I'll be surprised. It'd be interesting to see how much of it hits, really, because especially for me, so much of my stuff has been intensely personal, and the stuff that you were talking about in terms of your life, 28, 29, those ages are very different from mid-40s, and it doesn't make sense. Again, this is where it differs from this. Why I'm envious of bands. I can't get up as a 45-year-old and say, so I've got a baby. Well, I mean, I have a 15-year-old boy, which is what the case is now. So I think it'll be a mixture of trying to replicate some of the great. Sorry, you shouldn't say that about your own work. Trying to replicate,
no, you absolutely should. I think you should.
Trying to replicate some of my most popular routines, but also trying to piece together what it means what the passage of time means to those routines, I suppose. Because I have to sort of measured out my life in Fringes a bit, in the same way that at Christmas you often reflect back on all the other Christmases and where you are in life. The Fringe is sort of my main landmark of the year. So when I try and perform a routine that was from when I was 30, it means kind of mentally transporting myself to what it was to be like in this city 15 years. And again, because the city is much the same, as I walk up from the Princes Street, for example, up the mound there towards Assembly Hall, I can remember that exact walk 15 years ago on my way to do the show. And again, because it is the same streets and the same, it's impossible to believe it is 15 years. But there we go, that's time.
Yeah, that's it. And if you could, I mean, this might be too hard a question to answer because you've been looking at so many moments over the last 20 years for doing this show, but is there one moment sticks out, like an absolute highlight, your favourite Fringe moment?
Well, I think there was this series of 24-hour shows that I did 2004 to 2009, and the first one I was had no reputation at all. It was one of the first things that I'd ever made an impact with. So it was before I'd even done the solo show, and it began to about a dozen people on Cowgate, and then word spread before social media, of course, before all of that. And eventually, with 2 hours to go, I had to leave to perform my own show in the Tron. And so I brought the whole audience across from there to the Tron, and brought them all back. And when we came back, there was this enormous queue spreading off Cowgate towards like Hunter Square and stuff. And that was all people that had just heard about it during the 24 hours, but I wasn't aware of that because I'd been locked in one room.
Yeah.
That was the first taste I got of how in the Fringe you can set a ball rolling and it can become bigger than you ever imagined. And I'm going to try and I'm not going to do 24 hours tonight in the Shed because that wouldn't be popular, especially not with people running the place. But I'm going to try and replicate a couple of the more madcap elements. There was one I did in about 2007. I think it must have been 2007, where it was advertised that you just had to meet on the Mile in one of those weird little alleys, and I had a loudhailer, which is an idea I think I got from Simon Munnery years before when I was a punter. And there was about 200 people just standing around. It was midnight, and I just yelled at them in the street for, well, a good 2 or 3 hours before going into a room with them. And I do remember, in terms of favourite moments, I remember looking across all those people who'd all committed to see something. They didn't know what it was. It was just going to be an hour of madness, well, 24 hours of madness as it turned out. And I remember thinking that you can do anything here. You can ask if it was anything of an audience here. And I would say I've gone on to do that one way or another. And I still do. I've not ruled out the idea of doing another marathon show in the future. I'm still often do weird conceptual things, but those early years I do have a lot of exciting memories of, because I guess exciting is not quite the word. Very fond memories, but I suppose actually exciting is the word, because I see all sorts of other people do off the wall stuff now, things you could really only attempt at a festival like this. Shows in insane venues, adventures like this, really, where someone's just thought, what if there was a venue like that? People just did one show. Every time I see someone doing something with the Fringe that is new and unfamiliar and which you wouldn't probably pull off anywhere else, the feeling I get is that same feeling of being in my 20s thinking this is the best place in the world. There is nothing like it. And I've been around a lot now and to many comedy festivals, and there still is nothing like it, really. Not the scope of it and the extent of it and the chaos and exhaustion.
And so that feeling that's possible and is still happening, and that you see, it's so nice to hear you be excited by other people doing that and taking those risks. I
try to be supportive of young people, younger acts doing that, rather than, I never want to be one of those people that's like, oh, well, yeah, we used to do all this stuff 20 years ago. I love to see what a new generation makes of the possibilities of the Fringe.
Oh, you're doing a 10-hour show, are you?
Well, back in the day,
24 hours one time. Come back and see me when you've done that.
10 hours was just my intro.
Yeah.
I've met comics like that, and I just as you meet people who are like, all the best music was before 1980. I think one of the things that I like about the Fringe is I'm already booked to see a couple of people I've never heard of before, but who I gather are good. And of course, there's a part of you that sees a brilliant 27-year-old comic and goes, oh, bloody hell, the world doesn't need me for much longer. But on the whole, a thing I love about the Fringe is really being creatively wired by new voices and stuff I've not had exposure to before.
Excellent. And yeah, so if you strike me as somebody, I think I might already know the answer to this question, but you've got a spare hour at the Fringe. Are you going and chilling out, or are you catching a show if there's one?
Yeah, I'm always trying to cram in as much as I can. I these days I have a production company and we produce a bunch of shows, mostly for, again, like younger, up and coming acts. One of them is, this T-shirt is refers to a show by someone called Lucy Payman, in fact, and but this is a good example of the difficulty of Fringe promotion. We were talking about this before we started. This is a cool T-shirt and it references things in her show, but none of the details of the show are on it. So I've been walking around for a day and it won't have got anyone to the show, but I like the T-shirt. Yeah. So because of that, I'm sort of actively, I have half an eye on, can I be helping out my people, and I'm looking for new talent. But quite apart from that, I do frequently just go and see stuff because one person's told me it's good, and I that said, as I get a little bit, I've started to strategically slow down a tiny bit. I think there was a time when literally if I had a spare hour, I would fling myself at a show and I'd pack them in, and then I'm performing my show and doing all this. These days I've learned the value of sometimes that hour to chill could be just like a gin and tonic and a breathe in and out situation. But nonetheless, if I read a review or just hear someone chatting about something in some venue I've never been to, and it's a bloke or a woman I've never heard of before, there's a good chance I'll just be like, all right, let's do it. Because that is what the Fringe relies on.
Yeah, totally. I feel that particularly in Scotland, I live in Glasgow, and when it's here, it's like, you know, other cities are kind of spoiled for art more than we are, you know. But the fact that this is pretty much on our doorstep, with the small exclusion of the rail fare set by ScotRail, we'll get to that on another deep dive episode.
I was just going to say, it's not quite the doorstep, is it?
Yeah, no. But having that, why you wouldn't want to just come and eat up everything you can. You know, taking the chance to see something that's on now, take a punt, because otherwise it's an hour left of my own thoughts, and I've been there long enough. Do you know what I mean? So,
no, pay someone £8 to hear their thoughts instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Fill your brain.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because every year I talk to lots of people who live here. Some of them are people I recognise that have come to see me before, or taxi drivers, and a lot of them say, "Oh yeah, I've seen loads of stuff. I go and see whatever. They ask me what I recommend. They say I'm looking for something to." But then there's other people who are like, "Yeah, I must check the Fringe out this year. All these years I've never been." And that, it's not a criticism, because the last thing I want to be is someone that comes up from south of the border and treats the whole place like this is our playground. But it sort of astonishes me to think of living in the city. I understand why people dread it and disappear altogether.
Totally.
Because you're overrun by all these 21-year-olds on stilts from England. So absolutely fine. But I do find it peculiar to imagine being in the city for the whole month and seeing all this stuff and still resisting.
Yeah, like I come through a lot. My wife's family live in Edinburgh, so I'm through the rest of the year, and I know it functions as a city.
Yeah.
Like I know, like the offices are full of people working.
I've seen it in November. It's still here.
But when I'm in August and I'm walking, say, along by the stand, and you've got all those offices along there, and you look in and you see someone at a computer, and my head just goes to a place where I'm like, what could you possibly be doing right now?
It's funny, isn't it?
I'm like, is this a show? Am I watching a show? Is this like a...
It's true.
I'm like, no, this
shows
is...
you the
people are
mentality
living their life,
Yeah,
Gary.
people are trying to
fucking grip.
We're in their way, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And again, this shows you how insular you get as a performer, and especially if you're obsessed with the Fringe as I am. But every year on about August the 15th, I'll be going somewhere and I'll hear someone behind me go, "Oh, hi, the Fringe is on," and I'm like, "Yeah, fucking yes, it is." How can you? I've had people on the last week of the festival say, "Oh, so what are you doing in town?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here for the comedy festival," and it genuinely does seem a surprise to them. And again, that's not to do anyone down, especially if you live anywhere outside this square mile as well. Your life is untouched by it, but just within this environment, it feels as if it's impossible to imagine anything else.
Yeah. I did have people on the late train home the other night, and they were a bit swaying around a bit and like dropping their kebab and like making a lot of noise. And then the fact that they were standing up on the train and that they themselves enjoying a night out in Edinburgh, looked around at how busy it was and were like, "Oh, bloody Fringe."
Yeah.
It's like, but you can have your good time and you're good.
Yeah, classic case of drivers going out. Why is everyone out on the roads?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do get it, and I do think there's been difficulties between the city and the festival. I think that there is a sense that the Fringe just comes in and tramples on the city. But one of the many things I like about Shedinburgh is the initiative to have a fund that helps out artists that come through, because there's a sense sometimes that the festival is just guzzling up all this stuff and not really giving much back. But when it all works, when the people of the city and of course, people come from all over the world, but I do think it's important not to lose sight of the fact that the festival is about Edinburgh itself, and it's propped up by people who come out every year. Totally.
Well, speaking of that, then the people who prop it up, one of them, the artists, the best act or the best show you've ever seen in your 25 years as a punter and maker. Then
it's really hard. Yeah, it really is hard. This, because I don't know how many shows I've seen, but I guess even if it's been 20 every Fringe, which is conservative, that's still 400, is it, or something, which is unbelievable, actually. So many hours.
Yeah. Wow.
And it will be more than that. I'm probably pushing 500 shows that I've seen. And it's funny, some of them that you remember the most vividly are the worst ones, of course. The times in those 500 that I've thought within 10 minutes, this is a waste of my time. Some of those are vividly etched on my brain. But among the best ones, there's a show I don't know if you've come across a guy called Kieran Hodgson. He's a comedian, but also he does one-man shows, an actor as well. He did a show called Maestro a few years ago, which again, I say a few years ago, we'll Google it and it'll be 18 years ago. It was a sort of a coming of age tale, so sort of about his sexuality and stuff, but during it was about learning to play the violin, and he played sort of progressively more and more complex violin during it. So it was a kind of fusion of stand-up, live music, storytelling. One of these moments in the Fringe where you can't believe that someone has so many talents running concurrently, and you're furious. And that might not have been the best show I've ever seen. Probably wasn't the best show I've ever seen here, but it certainly is one that has stuck with me because it was quite a small room, a rapt audience, just the energy of one person carrying everything. But also some of that's quite a long time ago. So for balance, one of my most memorable Fringe shows in the past it was last year. I took my son, who's now, he's 14 then, to see Randy, the puppet in the Assembly Hall, ballroom, I think it was, Randy Feltface. And I know the guy a little bit, Heath, and I remember him doing it in a very small way. And again, it was a great show. It probably wasn't up there in the top of the 500, but it was certainly what I remember was just looking out across what would have been 400 or 500 people, all of them entranced by a tiny purple puppet, and thinking, again, he's done it all over the world, but still, this is a very Fringe moment, I thought. There's something about this experience that if someone said to you, what did you see last night? It would be very hard for me to explain. So there was a lot of and I also have fond memories of sometimes with the kids seeing gymnastics or drumming or, stuff that it's very easy to get sucked into the comedy side of it, but you forget there's fantastic stuff happening, not necessarily fantastic, but weird, fascinating things that are different from. I try and always see some stuff that's very different from what I'm doing myself.
That's it. Like you were saying, like not talking about Kieran Hodgson's show, and saying not necessarily like the best show. And I think that's something of the Fringe. We don't always expect or want to see something that would be on at the West End, or something that would be. You want to see something actually that carries that feeling, that magic. That
you want to be up close to someone, thinking, "Wow, I am purely in this person's head, in their mental universe for an hour."
Sharing something that I've come off into a room. Those times where you go into like a little cave somewhere, and I remember the first time I saw Ben Target.
Yep.
And in a little cave somewhere, and by the end he'd run out onto the street and we had to chase him when he was taking off on a bike. And you're just like,
that's the sort of stuff I love.
You're just like, you're taking you're thinking of this whole experience for us and how we enter and how we leave, and it's just magic.
Yeah, it really is, and it reconnects you with the thrill of performance, which you do forget if all you ever go to is like big theatres and stuff. Like one of the shows that he's not here this year, but there's a guy called Pete Heat who's a magician, and he does remarkable stuff. I'm a bit of a sucker for magic tricks, like these things where it's like, before the show I wrote out a name in an envelope, and then you named it, but also we scrambled it and it turns out the envelope is behind your ear. A lot of comedians hate magicians, but I'm like a boy about it. But what I've loved about watching Pete and other magicians at the festival is, again, you see that on TV or something, it's one thing, but if there's only 100 of you there, you're so close. before I was ever working with him, I went to see him 2 or 3 times to see the same show. And every time I would get a closer and closer seat, thinking one of these days I'm going to see what's going on here, but you never can. And again, that's a very fringy thing, seeing someone with a talent that is beyond, or it's at least a totally different shape from yours, but also being this close to them. There is something magical about that. I've always been like that. At music gigs, I always want to be as close to the stage. I love the whites of their eyes is the phrase, I suppose. You don't want to be too creepy about it, but like, I love feeling that there's almost no barrier between you and the performer, and the Fringe is great for that. As you say, half the time you're in a cave, so there is. Even if you wanted to be further away from them, you couldn't be.
And you'll be performing in this big shed space, and they're going to be right there.
It's great.
It's lovely.
Actually, another example of one of my top shows ever was Desiree Birch, who wasn't known at the time. She's now been on Taskmasters, all sorts of things. But I'd barely even heard of her. It was just one of these situations where someone recommended it. It was on a bus. It was just the top deck of a bus around Potter Row there, where there's always some weird stuff.
Was it parked in by the underpass?
That's right. By the underpass where there were some yurts and things this year. So we just got on this bus. Even just climbing to the top deck of this bus, you think, well, this could only really be the Fringe. And then Desiree, this big, forceful personality right in your face. But not only that, but you're on a bus. It's like, so that was a brilliant show. But again, part of the brilliance was just the intensity of a noisy American woman yelling at you, screaming at you on a bus. I do remember thinking once more, I wouldn't be able to tell people back home what this is like. They'll go and see her in the West End or wherever it is, and it'll be a good show, but this is what it's all about.
Well,
really.
It's like when you see a band early doors, I remember seeing, I always go on about the fact that I got to see the Killers at King Tut's in Glasgow, which has got like 100 people.
Yes, I've never been there. I've just heard about legendary tales of it.
Yeah. And I don't remember much of this. The fact they were supporting a band called Stella Star. They were fine, but they came on and just like blew the place away. And it's not like my favourite ever band, but you just know.
But you remember that moment.
That's special.
Yeah.
These guys are playing this like their headline in Glastonbury. And then a few months later on the radio, you're like, oh, that's those guys. Those guys I was telling you about.
Sometimes you just get that feeling. It's the same at the Fringe. I saw Radiohead in the 90s just before they became enormous.
That's way cooler than my Killer story.
But the venue was less cool. It was at Leisure Centre, Gloucester Leisure Centre.
Wow.
And because they were just on the cusp of making it huge, and it felt like everyone knew it. So there was, again, that sense of like, I can't believe we shouldn't be here, and soon we won't be able to do this. And I remember queuing up, and all of us are like mad indie fans. It was 17, and but people just bouncing on trampolines, completely oblivious to the fact. And again, that's quite fringy. There's venues here where there's 200 people excitedly queuing to see someone, but then other people are in the building for different purposes. They're just at the gym.
Totally.
So I do love that about the Fringe, the mashup of, I suppose, showbiz. I don't like the word showbiz, but that feeling of like the excitement, the glamour of it, but also the prosaic nature of so many of the spaces, and the insanity of throwing this into what is, as you say, a living, working city. Side note: my mate Douglas, big shout Douglas. He went to see James back around that time and didn't bother with the support act Radiohead. There you go.
He was.
I normally do see support acts partly because I'm a nerd, but also for this very reason, the fear of finding out that you shouldn't have skipped them years later.
So what then, looking back for this 20 years then, what advice, if you have any, would you give your younger self if you could speak to them now as you're about to do that first solo show 20 years ago?
The nice thing is, and this isn't true across all of my life, but just where the Fringe is concerned, if I were to meet myself walking down Pleasance towards the courtyard on the night of that first show, I would basically say, hello, I'm your 45-year-old self. Don't worry how this came about. It's from a podcast, but you don't know what that is either yet. And but basically, actually, that's the first piece of advice. Start a podcast really early on. Trust me, everyone's going to be doing that. Don't worry about DVDs as much as you think you are now. Podcasts. So then once I'd briefed Mark on how to make money 10 years ahead of everyone else, I would have said, actually, I'm from Edinburgh 2025, you're going to be very pleased with where you are at that point. You're going to have a very, very enjoyable 20 years. There'll be some bad bits, there'll be some good bits. Your life is going to be very complicated, but you are exactly where you hoped you would be, I think, Fringe-wise. But in terms of more specific advice, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Of course, there's always this paradox with the what would you say to your former self question, which is I feel like I only ever could have done it the way that I was because I'm me. Because what I was going to say was, it'd be nice to go back and say, although the Fringe is a passion for you and it's huge, it is very important for your career, you can afford not to worry about it as much as you think, not to obsess over it. bad reviews or just bad nights or whatever will pass just like that. You don't need to exhaust yourself as much as you are. You don't have to spend every second doing a show or being in a show or something. But again, I don't think 25-year-old Mark takes that advice, because I was that guy anyway. So it's only now that I am saying that. Yeah. But yeah, my broad advice and in fact, I know it wouldn't take that advice, because when I'm asked for advice for young comics now, I certainly up here, I will say it's not, although it's a huge thing, it isn't as big as it feels in the moment. You'll go back to wherever you live and people will ask you, like, they won't even know it was on. And that is true, but I know it's not going in with them, because it's impossible to separate yourself from this environment when you're in the middle of it, and especially if you're young and raw. So it's like anything, having kids, childbirth, every piece of advice someone gives you that they've done it, you're always like, sure, but I think I know better. And then when it's happened, you're like, I see, there's a reason people have been saying that forever.
Yeah. And of course that, it's all right to like Stephen Henry. One day you'll really like him.
I mean, that's one of the best bits. Yeah, if you'd asked me then, if it's the 25-year-old, but by now Henry's way past his best, I suppose, I would have said, yeah, I mean, he's a great player and everything, but I wouldn't say I'm a fan. And again, I've got to explain to that Mark, well, one day you'll have his number. One day you'll have like laughing until crying emojis from Henry on your phone. But for that, again, we don't even have emojis in 2005.
Exactly. You feel like, I need to know more about these emojis, future Mark.
Yeah,
tell me more.
It is funny. Again, we'll see this, I think, tonight when I try and replicate some of my old material. I've got a joke about predictive texting and how it used to finish off your words, but that tech compared with the generative AI and the things we're now talking about, it could be 100 years rather than 20.
Yeah.
The phone was tiny. I would show it to the audience. That was about as good a phone as everyone had. I had jokes about ringtones and things. That is one thing I wouldn't have predicted. You very rarely hear someone's actual phone ring now, and if they've got a ringtone, it will just be. There was a period where everyone had a specific pop song or something playing, and you think, Christ, in 10 years this will be unbearable, but it's gone, in fact, back the other way.
Totally gone. Yeah, you could pay like 59p to text, it'd be
that's right.
Back at Q Magazine or NME, they'd have the list of all the songs you think you might like from NME.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh yeah, like I'll get the ones that worked well on that text sound, like you get like the Gorillaz one,
exactly that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's they're coining it into.
I remember the Arctic Monkeys lyric that was there's only music, so there's new ringtones or something like that. But that wouldn't resonate now. That's in the same way that some of my jokes weren't, because we've gone back the other way. We've realised that you can just listen to music without doing that. Yeah.
Right, well, you've kind of touched on these, but we'll get some audience questions. The first from the team at the show, Furniture Boys. I'd love to tell you what it's on, but there's their flyer. It's like a deck chair or a phone holder. Can't tell. It's a piece of furniture. We'll list the show underneath. Oh, I've got it sitting up. There you go.
It's a superlative piece of, it's very, very stylish flyer. But as you say, you don't know where the show's on from.
I don't know where the show's on yet, but we'll link it below if people are interested to know where Furniture Boys is.
I think you shouldn't. I think you should just link still the QR code.
Yeah, we'll just put the QR
make them
code
do the work.
Below. Yeah. And they ask, well, what advice would you give someone doing the Fringe for the first time? And you sort of touched on it there.
Yeah, but I suppose to add to what I've already said, I would think, I'd say these days I eat proper breakfast. Actually, we were talking about how we both failed to rehydrate properly yesterday, but I try and drink enough water, get decent sleep. I still stay out late. I still drink. I'm never going to be one of these guys that's like, oh, I'm too old for all that now. I love that side of the Fringe, but basically don't abandon all of the things that normally hold your life together. The sleep, the exercise, eat some fruit and veg, maintain conversations with people back home who don't care about this. Don't. I think the people that really lose their bearings here are people who have forgotten about every other aspect of life. So these days I'm better at least taking a bit of the day that is just a normal person's day going through the world. I would recommend that to anyone, especially when you're starting out. Everything is like, we've got where are our flyers, so we've got the review on them. Yeah. We've got a reviewer in today, and all that is exciting and it's adrenalized and everything. But 25 days of that without eating proper meals and you're done. So look after the person you are as well as the performer.
Yeah, and then you have a bad show in the middle of that and it hits you so much harder.
Exactly.
You don't have the reserve and the adrenaline's gone, and
Precisely. It's not all about performing well every day. It's about living your life viably.
Yeah. Well, on that, and again, it kind of touched on like shows that don't go so well, but Julia from Golden Time, and they want to know, how do you deal with bad reviews?
I remember getting one.
Only one, Brent. 25 years and he remembers one bad review. That's Golden Time.
I didn't say I've only ever had one. There's just one that I particularly remember. And I won't name him, but like the guy who did it is years ago, but he still is reviewing. And every time his name comes up, I get a bit of a chill. Not in a good way, not as in I got chills, they're multiplying. As in I got chills, I'm remembering your shitty review.
Well, they are multiplying.
They're multiplying, but not in a pleasant way, no.
Yeah.
And it was, now this will sound like a sort of humble brag or something. It was a 3-star review, which is no disaster, as we know, but it was quite sneering almost in tone. And the thing I remember, firstly, I shouldn't have been reading it. This wouldn't happen these days. But in those days, I was still young enough that I'd look through the papers, the actual newspapers, and I'd find it. And I knew this guy had been in, so I was like, that makes it worse. It goes 2 or 3 days of looking through the Scotsman or whatever it was. It wasn't the Scotsman, something like that. It was a big one. And then to find when the review does jump out at you in print, it's, these days the reviews are just an ever-flowing stream. They're gone. But when it was newspapers, you felt everyone was looking at them as well, know. But yeah, specifically, this review said something like Stephen K. Amos or McIntyre. He basically named a couple of comedians. It was a large rumour house that would be able to command a space like this, but Watson is just not up to that. So it's not only a not very good review, but it named people that the reviewer would rather have watched instead, and that did hurt. And that, again, that's not the only one. I've had a couple of years where the show didn't go as well, and people are very, very defensive about reviews. Sometimes they criticise the whole existence of reviewers. They get vendettas against reviewers. Even this bloke that doesn't rate me, I have absolutely nothing personal about it, and I do try and learn from it. It's in the heat of the moment. This is difficult because you're well within your rights to say, okay, that is a load of shit. That review is nonsense, and they didn't get the show, and that person's an idiot, and they're not a comedian. What do they know? And those are all completely acceptable ways of protecting yourself. But if you can, think about what the review says. You don't have to change your show, but just think, well, can I learn anything from this? Are there things, not even, is he right that joke isn't funny or that theme is, but just like, how do I grow as an artist? Because you're going to get negative feedback. Although I've got books out, and I never look at the Amazon reviews. But if I did, there'd be 1-star reviews for all of them. You cannot.
Too many words in this.
Yeah. Well, I did get one of those ones where it's like it arrived with page 16 missing or something. I'm like, you can't give me 1 star for that. I'm not printing everyone individually. But yeah, one thing you do learn, if you've been doing it as long as me, is that there will be, if you put something out in the world, there will be an enormous range of critical feedback to it. Lots of people will like it, but lots of people won't. And you just have to lose your fear of that. You have to, a bad review can be a sledgehammer blow if you're not getting that much attention. But if you believe in your work, or you believe that you're progressing, then you can afford to say, all right, well, that's very disappointing, and I will glare at that person if I see him. But at the end of the day, it's just another step in learning about what it is to be a performer.
Yeah, that's it. And hopefully you can, maybe you look at those ones further down the line once you've made peace with the run, and you say, okay, there could be something at the heart of this.
Yeah,
if I listen to it, I might disagree with them, but they might be getting at something, and if I come at it in a different way, I might get that point across. Or you might not.
Well, he had a point. The room sort of was too big. I felt I'd stepped up and done a really good job of it, but still, the experience was probably not as good as watching me at a quarter of the size. So, I did think about it afterwards. That's the thing. In September, you'll look at these reviews and you will see things. You're like, oh, perhaps that was right. But Chris Addison told me, who's one of my sort of mentors at the Fringe, that he never read any of them. Which normally people are lying when they say that, but what gave it a ring of truth was he said he would then read them all on the train home.
Yeah.
And that, whether it's true or not, reflects a very healthy mentality, I think, because even that close to it, even on the train home, they just don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And you've got that perspective.
Yeah, it's gone. So now you can take stock.
But if you do find out about a nasty one, just think it doesn't really matter. And I would say it matters much less now than it used to, as I say, because you assume everyone else has read your reviews and you're shamed, but no one has got any time to think about you. They're all obsessed with their shows, their reviews.
Yeah. There was one more audience question that came from Jamie Scott Gordon, who doesn't have a show this year, but wants to know what John Virgo's like.
I only met John Virgo for the first time at the Crucible this year. And the weird thing, of course, about sports people is they're either enormously famous if you grew up watching them, or no one has a clue. I suppose it's a bit different with John Virgo because it's a big break, but, I was just taken into a back room at the Crucible. And I think it was Ken Doherty actually said, and so this is John, this is JV, as if I'd known this guy for 20 years, but I hadn't. I've just watched him on TV for 20 years.
Yeah.
He was exactly as you imagine him, exactly as you'd want him to be, a perfect gentleman, but you can't get past if you meet someone whose voice you've heard for that long, you just can't get past. You want to just blurt out, "This is weird that you're John Virgo." Yeah.
You want to just
At least with Hendra,
there going, "Where's the cue ball going?"
Yeah. I think he must get so much of people shouting that at him. Your biggest dread is yelling someone's catchphrase at them. So I managed to avoid doing that.
Yeah, very well done. Right, on to the quickfire. So, your top tip show for this year, if you have one.
I have seen a show by someone called Sam Nicoresti, which is excellent. They're trans. It's amazingly, even though I'm helping with the show, I'm struggling to remember the name of it.
Yeah. That's right. We'll link below.
It's called Baby Doomer. That's what it's called.
Baby Doomer.
It's a tremendous show, but I ought to recommend things that are not connected with me
as
well.
But,
I think.
So you've got to believe in the stuff you're bringing.
Well, it's true, but there are also there's so much out there. I saw Classic Penguins by Gary Starr, which is a huge show in the Purple Cow. He's there's no getting away from it. Pretty naked for most of it. That was a great experience, and also another example of something which, and once again, he's done it internationally, but quintessentially Fringe thing. But there's loads of more stuff that I'm excited to see as well. There's a guy, I haven't even seen this show, I don't know anything about it really, but there's a guy called Aidan Jones, I think, and it's on at something like 10 in the morning, and Australian, that's not a phrase, he's an Australian, he was a pianist or something, anyway, he plays Chopin's Nocturne while doing a comedy show too. That's all I know, but that's
that sounds
that's the sort of thing.
Yep.
And 10 in the morning, very peculiar idea for a show. Some sort of virtuoso extra skill. I've booked a ticket. I'm ready to go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Top tip for surviving the Fringe. Kind of touched on this earlier on.
I think it's to do with managing to mentally check out of it and also staying in relatively healthy lifestyle habits if you can.
Excellent. Well, on that, or it might be a healthy choice, it might not be, but your best food spot for the Fringe.
It's a semi-healthy. It's Mother India's cafe on John Street there, which is one of the perhaps the best Indian food that I've ever had, actually. I've had curry in many cities of the world, as all comedians have. But my team and I go there every year traditionally, often on the first and the last nights. We went on the first night this year. It's Indian sort of tapasy, supposedly small plates, which means you always ordered 21 of them, and then you're like, right, we've made a mistake. One year we ordered so many that the waiter started going, I really think that's enough now. That will be enough. I don't even brought all of them. But it is sublime stuff. Yep. Yeah, and it's a tiny little place. Yeah, it doesn't look like much at all, but it really is, yeah.
Delicious grub. Thoroughly endorse. Best night out at the Fringe?
Well, funnily enough, we talked about music. One of my best nights years and years ago was seeing Ben Folds in the Liquid Rooms, I think it was. Because that's one of the few nights ever at the Fringe that I've done something that wasn't at the Fringe. He just happened to be in town, and it, I'd done 27 shows. I'd seen 57 shows. The liberation of just going and seeing something like that, and remembering the rest of my life.
Similarly, I went to see Divine Comedy in the Liquid Rooms. It's similar,
very
thing.
similar
it just broke
genre
me out of it.
Yes,
loved it.
Yeah,
got the train home. Felt like I wasn't leaving the Fringe that night. I felt like I was leaving like something else.
It truly,
brilliant.
It is funny after all I've said about how much I love the Fringe, but one of the best experiences you can have here is doing something which is unrelated to it. Yeah,
well, I'm excited because one of my favourite guilty pleasures, Men Without Hats, are playing.
Men Without Hats?
Yeah.
As in Safety Dance?
Yeah. And believe me, so much more.
I have to say that's the only song I know, but nonetheless,
they're playing.
What a song, though. It puts a smile on my face every time.
Absolute banger. They're playing on the 22nd, and that's going to be my
that's great.
Fringe step out. Delight. So, your worst sleeping arrangement you've had to do at the Fringe?
Well, I don't know if I guess this is the time for this story. I haven't told many people this, but in 2002, I won. My break was winning one of the open mic competitions up here, and they put you in a hotel for the night before the final. And Tim Key, my friend then and now, came up to support me. Or I think he was in Edinburgh. He was also performing, but we were nobody. We're 22, and but Key had nowhere to stay. So long story short, I shared this hotel bed with Tim, very much as friends, nothing more, but nonetheless a bit too old for that really. And we were hammered because the event was in the afternoon. I'd won this thing in the afternoon, and then we'd been celebrating for many hours. And I also wasn't used to drinking at all at that point. Not really. It was the drunkest I'd ever been. And there's no nice way to tell the story, really. But we woke up, and one of us had wet the bed. But neither of us had visibly pissed our pants. The mattress was wet, and neither of us. It wasn't that we were accusing each other. We were collectively just like, this is baffling. it didn't even smell of wheat. It was as if someone had just tipped loads of water on the. It was inexplicable, but we talk about it every so often. Both of us remember it. And we collectively either wet the bed or made the bed very wet. And we, after, of course, checked out, fled. But that is, I'll never forget that, obviously. And nor will Tim. This year we were arranging to meet somewhere, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's down there where we wet the bed, isn't it?"
Why didn't you stay there for old time's sake?
I can't even remember what the hotel was, but if I walk in the lobby and I get looks, then even though it's 23 years ago, I'm turning tail.
Oh dear me. Well, that delivered, and I hope Tim's all right with you telling that publicly.
Well, so do I. It was like, it has been a sort of a secret, but I was going to say we've leaked it a little bit. That's not the right word.
I suppose it'd be worse if you said you've had a hunch the whole time it was him.
That's the thing. I am not throwing him under the bus here.
You've shared with us a delightful mystery.
It's merely one of history's unsolved mysteries, and will remain so.
Well, if anyone out there has any information, maybe they weren't there at the hotel that night, or
if anyone has information, please do not. I don't want this to be one of those cold cases that get unearthed after. Let's leave sleeping dogs be for whatever the fuck is.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope that 20 years of trying your absolute bloody best is a delight, and that folk have a great time, that your predictive text jokes go over.
We'll see about that, yeah.
If not as well as they did at the time, but they are given a new birth of humour with how poorly they work.
Yeah, with how irrelevant they've become.
Aired with a new delight of nostalgia, and we can all pine for times that were more simple and laugh just as much.
That will happen for sure. But everyone's going to come away with a strange sense of what 20 years have done to us.
Yeah. So thank you. Have a great time. Enjoy the run as well. We didn't get to really speak about your show, which is over at the Pleasance.
The Pleasance Courtyard, yeah.
But I assume tickets will be flying fast because they always do.
It's been very nice. Yeah, that is one thing that coming for 20 years gets you. Yeah.
So, but if you can, snap a one up. Always a delight to see Mark perform. I'll be along at some point. Can't wait.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to see you next time, where I will be welcoming our guests, Shit Theatre. They will be joining us here at the Shed. But for now, do what you need to do. Like, subscribe if you haven't. If you have, give yourself a pat in the back. Go make yourself a lovely cup of tea. Get yourself a digestive or a Tunnocks tea cake. That's what I'll be doing before I go off and get my show underway. Listen, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will see you all very soon.